Every morning starts the same way. The creak of floorboards beneath my feet as I descend the stairs to the kitchen. 7 o'clock, not a minute later. A habit 50 years long. Elsa always laughed at my punctuality. Boyd, you have a clock built into you like a Swiss chronometer. Today, the house greets me with silence. This is the 5th year. I put an old-fashioned kettle on the stove, no electric ones. I like to listen to the water boiling, the hum growing into a high-pitched whistle. While I make breakfast, I look out the window at my orchard. The apple trees Elsa and I planted the first year after we bought the house now tower over the garage roof. 46 years have passed. The phone rings as I finish my second cup of coffee. Good morning, Boyd. Rowena's voice sounds cheerful as always. The meeting's been moved up to 9:30. Garrett said he had some business with Erland at Northern Polymers. My son didn't see fit to tell me in person. I'm not surprised, just stating a fact. You know Garrett. Rowena's voice is awkward. He asked me to tell him. Of course I do. My only son. Actually, the only one left in the business. Abernathy chose science over the family business. Clever girl. Thank you, Rowena. I'll be there at 9 o'clock. My car is a 2000 Buick, another habit I don't want to give up. Garrett keeps telling me that the chairman of the Hemclay Board of Directors should have an executive car. At least a Lincoln, Dad. It's ridiculous to drive to investor meetings in this museum piece. I wonder how he would describe me. It takes 20 minutes to get to the office. Cold Springs isn't a metropolis. There's no traffic, just stoplights at intersections. I remember when the River Mall was a golf course, when there were only 3 houses on Oak Street, when Maple Avenue was a dirt road. Hemclay is located in an industrial area on the edge of town, 2 office buildings and a manufacturing facility, 276 employees. There's no trace left of the garage where I started in 1972. Just the picture in my office me, Elsa and tiny Abernathy in my arms, standing in front of the peeling Hemmings adhesive sign. Garrett hadn't been born then. Rowena meets me at the entrance, as she has done for 30 years. She's tall, with a proud posture, wearing a strict suit and carrying an unchanged file folder. Her red hair is half gray now, but it's gathered in the same neat bundle it's always been. The quarterly reports are ready. She holds out the folder to me, and Torrin called, said the patent paperwork will be ready by the end of the week. Thank you, Rowena. I take the folder and we take the elevator together. How's your daughter? Celeste? Finished her first year of grad school. She says the research is going well, but I honestly don't understand the details. Something to do with biochemistry. I nod. Celeste is like her mother, just as determined. I remember her running through these hallways as a child when Rowena would sometimes take her to work with her. My office was the same as it had been 20 years ago. A solid wooden desk, a leather chair, a worn couch against the wall. Modern technology has infiltrated here too. A computer on the desk, video conferencing. But the basics haven't changed. Some people think it's old-fashioned. I prefer the word traditional. The meeting is still an hour away, and I dive into the reports. Hemclay is not just an adhesive manufacturer. We specialize in high-tech industrial adhesives used in the automotive, aerospace, and construction industries. Our formulas are the result of decades of research and development. I created many of them myself back when the lab fit in the basement of our first house. A knock on the door interrupts my thoughts. Good morning, Father. Garrett walks in uninvited, as always. 42 years old, but still something boyish in his features. Inherited Elsa's tall stature and her dark hair. All I have is a stubborn chin and, unfortunately, a temper. Morning, Garrett. I put the reports aside. I hear you've been meeting with Northern Polymers. Yes, Erland suggested an interesting scheme of cooperation. He sits down casually in the chair across from me. I think we should consider merging production facilities. A merger? I can't hide my surprise. We've only discussed raw material supplies. Times are changing, Father. Garrett taps his fingers on the armrest. Market consolidation is inevitable. Small companies won't survive. Small companies. $25 million in market value. Fourth largest manufacturer of industrial adhesives in the country. Our company is doing great, I say calmly. The last quarter showed 8% growth, which could have been 15 if we'd accepted West Coast Chemical's offer last year, Garrett retorts. You're being too conservative in your strategy. The market doesn't forgive that approach. It's an old argument. Garrett joined the company 10 years ago after his own business, a chain of sports stores, went under. I offered him a position in sales to get him back on his feet. He quickly rose to director of marketing and 3 years ago became vice president. Ambition has always been his strong suit, but patience was not. We'll discuss it in the meeting, I say, signaling that the conversation is over. Garrett stands up, pulling on his jacket, an expensive tailored one. By the way, Nima wants to know if you're coming to Adrina's birthday party on Saturday. She's turning 16, my oldest granddaughter. I remember holding her in my arms at the birth center, a tiny little bundle with huge eyes. Now she rarely looks up from the phone when I see her. Of course I'll be there. 6 o'clock? 5. Garrett's already at the door. And no corporate gifts, please. Flint didn't like the chemistry set last time. The door closes. I'm alone, staring at the pictures on the wall. Family snapshots from different years. Elsa and the kids on a picnic. Abernathy at graduation. Garrett and Nima on their wedding day. Grandchildren, Audrina and Flint, at different ages. The phone on my desk beeps a reminder of the meeting. I gather my papers and head to the conference room. I run into Rowena on the way. "Everything okay, Boyd?" she asks, looking at me carefully. "It's business as usual," I answer. "Garrett's making plans, which don't include consulting with you. Rowena knows us too well." "Exactly. The board members are already gathered in the conference room. 4 outside directors and 3 inside directors. Me, Garrett, and Rowena, who serves as CFO. The discussion starts with quarterly results, then moves on to plans for the next year. When it comes to the Northern Polymers proposal, I notice Garrett exchanging glances with Weilander, one of the outside directors. They have clearly discussed this in advance. "I think a merger of production facilities is too risky," I say after studying the proposal. "We would lose control over the quality of the process. Our reputation is built on formula stability. But we'd gain in scale," Garrett argues, "cost savings of at least 20%, and we open the way to new markets through their distribution network." The discussion drags on. I notice that Valander and one other director are completely on Garrett's side. The other 2 are wavering. Rowena backs me up with convincing financial arguments against a hasty decision. Eventually we come to a compromise, to study the matter in more detail and come back to it in a month. I can see the displeasure on my son's face, but he holds back. After the meeting, I return to the office. The day is filled with meetings and calls. By 5 o'clock I feel tired, not like I used to when I could work into the night. Age is taking its toll, though I don't like to admit it. There's an emptiness waiting for me at home. Sometimes I talk to Elsa, tell her about the past day. I imagine her sitting in her favorite chair by the window, knitting or reading. "Garrett's trying to speed things up again, honey. You always said he was in too much of a hurry." In the evening, Abernathy calls. My daughter lives 3 hours away, works in a research lab. Chemistry is in the family blood. "What's up, Daddy?" Her voice always cheers me up. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm working as hard as ever." "Don't work too hard," she sounded concerned. "How's Garrett?" "More ambitious than ever." I try to make it sound neutral. "Today he proposed a merger with Northern Polymers." "He's always been impatient," Abernathy sighs. "But you're still in charge, right?" "For now," I answer, surprised at the "for now." We talk about her work, about how the research on new polymers is going. Abernathy has inherited my passion for chemistry and Elsa's precision thinking. It's a perfect combination. After the conversation, I walk out into the garden. The evening air is cool but pleasant. I walk around the apple trees, checking on the young pear seedlings planted last year. The garden has always been my solace. The next morning, I arrive at the office earlier than usual. In the hallway, I run into Leon, the head of the production department, who has been with the company almost since its inception. "Boyd," he shakes my hand, "early today. I wanted to check on the test results of the new formula," I explain. "How's the family?" "Grandson went to college," Leon glows with pride. "The first in the family to get a college degree. That's great news. I'm genuinely happy for him. If you need help with school, Hemclay always supports the children of employees." "Thanks, Boyd." He nods gratefully. "You know, some companies forget these things, but you always do." At that moment, Garrett appears from around the corner. He nods at both of us, but there's a look of impatience in his glance at Leon. "This conversation is over. We have more important things to do. Father, we need to discuss the proposal from Northern Polymers," he says without even saying hello. "I have some new calculations." Leon smiles understandingly and leaves, and Garrett and I head toward my office. "I've been going over their financials for the last 5 years," Garrett begins as soon as we enter. "Their profitability is consistently above market. A merger would give us access to their technology and customer base." "What do we have to lose?" I ask, sitting down at the table. "Nothing significant," Garrett shrugs. "Some administrative functions will have to be merged, but that's common practice." "Administrative functions are people, Garrett," I remind him. "People who have been working here for decades." "Business is business, Father." His tone turns patronizing. "Sentimentality doesn't pay." I look at my son and see a stranger. Where is the boy who once ran around the shop, marveling at the huge mixers? Who asked endless questions about how the machines worked? Who was proud that his father makes the glue that holds the world together? "Are you having lunch on Saturday?" I'm changing the subject. "What does Adrena want as a gift?" Garrett looks a little confused by the sudden change of conversation. "Yeah, 5 o'clock. About the gift." He's thinking about it. "Nima said something about a drawing tablet. Adrena's into design." "Okay," I nod. "Say hi to Nima." When Garrett leaves, I sit looking out the window for a long time. Outside the window is the factory I built out of nothing. Every square meter contains a piece of my life. Every employee is part of the Hemclay family. I wonder if Garrett realizes that business isn't just about numbers and reports. That behind every contract, behind every formula, there are years of work, failures, and breakthroughs. That a company is a living organism, not just a line item on a balance sheet. The phone's ringing. It's Rowena. "Boyd," Adams Aerospace called. "They need a consult on a new composite adhesive. I said you'd get back to them." "Thank you, Rowena." I make a note in my notebook. "Did you talk to Garrett today?" "Yes." She pauses for a moment. "He asked for financial projections in case of a merger with Northern Polymers. What do you think?" "Honestly," Rowena's voice gets quieter, "I think it's an attempt to gain control of the company in a roundabout way. Northern is not a firm worth getting involved with. They have too aggressive a takeover policy." I nod, even though she can't see me. Rowena has always been perceptive. "Thank you for your honesty. Will you drop by my place this afternoon? We need to discuss the quarterly report. The day goes by in a routine of calls, meetings, routine matters. I stop by the lab where our chemists are working on new formulas. It always lifts my spirits to see young specialists continuing the work I started. In the evening, before I leave, Rowena comes in with a folder of documents. "Look at it, please, until tomorrow." She puts the folder on the table. There's data on the new project. I thank her, and we walk out of the building together. In the parking lot, I notice Garrett's car is still parked. "He's in a meeting with Wylander," Rowena explains, following my gaze. They've been lingering a lot lately. There's a concern in her voice that I fully share. Adrina's birthday fell on a rainy Saturday. I parked my old Buick between Garrett's gleaming SUV and some sports car, apparently belonging to one of the guests. My son's house is a two-story mansion in an upscale neighborhood in Cold Springs, with a manicured lawn and fancy landscaping. I remember paying the down payment on this house 5 years ago. "Temporary help," Garrett said then. "As soon as things get better at the company, I'll pay it back." The doorbell rings and I'm greeted by Nima, my sister-in-law, a slender woman with a perpetually tense expression. She smiles strainedly. "Boyd, you are precise as always," she says, taking my coat. "The guests are already gathering in the living room." I hand her a wrapped box containing a drawing tablet. "It's for Adrina. Garrett said she's interested in design." Nima nods, placing the gift carelessly on the hallway table among the other boxes and packages. "Yes, she dreams of going to art school after high school, though I think a business degree would be more practical. Typical Nima, always thinking about practicality." I could never understand what attracted Garrett to this woman other than her connections. Her father was a prominent investor in Cold Springs before his bankruptcy 7 years ago. There are about 20 people gathered in the living room, a few teenagers, obviously Adrina's friends, and adults I hardly know. I notice a few parents whose children attend the same school as their granddaughter. Villander is here too, with a glass of wine, chatting animatedly with Garrett in the corner of the room. They fall silent as I approach. "Father, glad you could make it," Garrett feigns cordiality. "Do you remember Hal Weilander?" "Of course," I shake hands with the Hemclay board member. "I didn't realize you two were family friends." "Oh, Garrett and I have discovered many common interests in recent months." Weilander smiles, but his eyes remain cold. "Your son is a man with a vision for the future." "Absolutely," I answer neutrally. "Where's the birthday girl?" "Adrina will be down in a minute." Garrett checks his expensive watch, a gift from me for his 40th birthday. You know teenagers, hair is more important than punctuality. I find a seat on the couch next to Flint, my 14-year-old grandson who's completely absorbed in some game on his phone. "Hi, Flint." I try to get his attention. "How's school going?" "Fine," he mumbles, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Still into chemistry? Last time I saw you, you were talking about some kind of school project." "That was last year." Flint finally looks up. "I'm more into computers now. This conversation is not going well. I remember reading books to Flint when he was little, taking him to the company lab, showing him simple, safe experiments. He was so fascinated back then. What's changed?" Adrina appears, a tall, slender girl with long, dark hair. She has inherited Elsa's proud posture and her expressive eyes. She's wearing a fancy dress that I'm sure cost a lot of money. "Grandpa." She walks over to me, allowing herself to be hugged. "Thank you for coming." There's politeness in her voice, but no more. She used to climb into my lap and ask me to tell her the story of the glue that keeps airplanes in the sky. Now it's like a wall has grown between us. The celebration goes on as usual. Cake, presents, congratulations. I sit on the sidelines watching Garrett play the perfect host. He's always been good at it, making an impression. Nima bustles around the guests, and the children socialize in their own circle, occasionally glancing at their parents. Villander sits down beside me again when most of the guests have already engaged in casual conversation. "Boyd, I've been wanting to talk to you informally for a long time," he begins, adjusting his tie. "About the future of Hemclay. We discuss it at every board meeting," I answer with restraint. "Yes, but it's a formal setting. I'm talking about strategic vision," he lowers his voice. "You've built a great company, but the market is changing and Chemclay needs new energy, new approaches, which I understand my son is proposing." I look at him carefully. "Garrett is very talented." Villander nods. "And he's ready to take on more responsibility. Perhaps you should consider a A quieter role. Chairman emeritus, for example. Less stress, more free time. That's it. It all makes sense now. Garrett isn't just negotiating behind my back. He's plotting a coup on the board of directors. Thank you for your concern, Hal, I smile, trying not to show that I understand his game. But I don't plan to retire yet. There are too many unfinished projects. Vilander smiles back strainedly and steps back when he sees Garrett heading our way. Everything all right, Father? Asks the son. I hope Hal didn't bore you with golf talk? No, we were talking about business, I answer, watching his reaction carefully. About the future of Hemclay. A shadow of worry flickers across Garrett's face, but he quickly pulls himself together. On Saturday? At a birthday party? He tries to turn it into a joke. Father, you never rest. The evening ends around 10. I say goodbye to my grandchildren, hug Adrena, thank Nima for her hospitality. Garrett walks me to my car. You're leaving early, he remarks. Is everything okay? Yeah, I'm just tired, I answer. And I want to stop by the office tomorrow to go over some paperwork. On Sunday? Garrett shakes his head. You need more rest, Dad. At your age. There it is. At your age. A phrase I'm hearing more and more often. My age doesn't stop me from running a company, I say calmly. Good night, Garrett. All the way home, I mull over my conversation with Weilander. Garrett is obviously trying to get the board's support for some major changes, maybe even my removal as chairman. I need advice, and I know who to turn to. The next morning, I call Torrin Radcliffe, my longtime friend and company lawyer. We've known each other for almost 40 years, back when I was just starting the business, and he was a young lawyer renting a tiny office across the street from my first warehouse. Boyd, buddy, his deep voice sounds warm even over the phone. To what do I owe this Sunday's call? We need to talk, Torrin, in person. Sounds serious. He understands my tone. Come to my house this afternoon. Elise will be happy to see you. Torrin's house is a cozy mansion in the old part of town, with an extensive library and a collection of antique clocks he's been collecting all his life. Elise, his wife of 45 years, meets me at the door. Boyd? She gives me a hug. You don't visit us often enough. Business, Elise, I smile. But it's always good to see you. Thorin is waiting in the library with 2 glasses of whiskey on the table between the chairs. Tall, with a gray beard and shrewd eyes, he hasn't changed much in the years we've known each other, except for the wrinkles. So, he says, as we settle into our chairs. What's going on? I tell him about recent events, Garrett's meetings with Weilander, the conversation at the party, the hints of my retirement. It sounds unpleasant, but not surprising. Thorin sips his whiskey. Gareth has always been impatient and ambitious. Do you think he really plans to depose me? Quite possibly. Thorin is not used to softening the truth. The question is how he's going to do it. You have a controlling interest, 53%. As long as you hold them, he can't just vote you out of office. But he can convince the board that I'm unfit to run the company because of my age. I'm voicing my concerns, and initiate some kind of legal procedure. Theoretically, yes, Torrin looks at me thoughtfully. But that would require solid proof of your incapacity, which I don't have. Hemclay is thriving under your leadership. No, I think he'll go another way. Which is? Merger or takeover, Thorin steps forward. If Hemclay merges with another company, the ownership structure will change. Your controlling interest will be diluted, and you'll lose your casting vote. I'm reminded of Garrett's persistence with Northern Polymers. Suddenly, everything falls into place. 2 days later, I woke up with a sense of impending disaster. It had happened to me before important negotiations or when there were serious problems in production. Elsa called it my business sense. Today was the monthly board meeting, and I knew something was going to happen. I spent the morning reviewing the documents Rowena had prepared. financial reports, projections for the next quarter, plans for launching a new product line. All the numbers were stable, some even exceeding expectations. Hemclay was on the upswing, despite the increasing competition in the industrial adhesives market. An hour before the meeting, Abernathy called. "Just wanted to wish you luck, Dad," she said. "I have a feeling you're going to need it today." "Why do you feel that way?" I asked, though I felt the same way myself. "Rowena called me last night. Said Garrett seemed overconfident, like he knew something the others didn't." "We'll see," I replied. "In any case, I have nothing to fear. The company is thriving under my leadership." "Be careful, Dad." Garrett had never been honest about his goals. I remembered how, at 16, he forged my signature on a permit for a school trip from which he returned with cigarettes and alcohol, or how in college he'd tricked his roommate into getting a better spot in the dorms. Little things that Elsa and I wrote off as adolescent maximalism, probably for nothing. I arrived at the office half an hour before the meeting started. In the hallway, I ran into Leon, who looked tense. "Is everything all right?" I asked. "Yeah, Boyd, it's just—" He got a little stiff. "Be prepared for some surprises tonight." "What do you mean?" Garrett was gathering some of the executives last night, after work, at a bar across the street. I wasn't invited, but Jenkins was there. Said it was about the need for change and a new vision for the future of the company. I thanked Leon for the information and headed for my office. On the way, I met Rowena, who looked even more worried than usual. "Boyd, I need to talk to you," she said, looking around. "I just heard that Wylanders brought a representative from Apex Chemicals with him. He's already in the conference room." "What?" I stopped. "Why? It wasn't on the subpoena." "I don't know. Garrett met them at the entrance. They talked about something, and then they went into the room." I tried to clarify, but was politely sent away to prepare materials for the presentation. I felt anger building up inside. This was no longer just disrespectful. It was a direct attempt to bypass me in important decisions. "Thank you, Rowena. I think it's time we found out what's going on." When I entered the conference room, all the board members were already there, and indeed a stranger was present, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Garrett was talking animatedly with him and Wylander, but the conversation broke off when I arrived. "Father," Garrett stood up, "may I introduce Kenton Ashford, CEO of Apex Chemicals." "Mr. Hemmings," Ashford extended his hand, "I've heard a lot about you. Your company is a real gem in our industry." "Thank you," I shook his hand, trying to remain calm. "I'm surprised to see you at a private board meeting, though, especially since I wasn't informed." "I invited Mr. Ashford," Garrett interjected. "We have an important matter to discuss that directly affects his company. And this matter couldn't wait until a separate meeting." I looked directly at my son. "I think everything will become clear during the meeting." Garrett smiled the same smile I always saw when he was hiding something. "Why don't we get started?" I took my seat at the head of the table. Garrett sat to my right, Rowena to my left. The other directors arranged themselves along the table, and Ashford sat at the far end, next to Wylander. The meeting started with the usual questions: financial results for the past month, updates on current projects, reports from the department heads. Everything went smoothly until they reached the miscellaneous item at the end of the agenda. "I have an important proposal I'd like to discuss." Garrett rose from his seat and handed out folders with documents to everyone present. "As you know, the market for industrial adhesives is becoming increasingly competitive. To maintain and strengthen our position, we need strategic partnerships." I opened the folder and saw the headline: "Proposal to merge Chemclay and Apex Chemicals. My company, my life, my legacy. And my son plans to give it all away without my knowledge?" "Garrett," I interrupted him, trying to speak calmly, "the decision to merge takes a long time to analyze, to discuss, and most importantly, to get shareholder approval." And I, as the owner of the controlling interest, did not agree to even consider such a proposal. That's why we brought it up today, Father, Garrett continued to smile. To begin the discussion, Mr. Ashford will present the merits of a potential merger, and we can all evaluate the prospects together. I looked around the table. Rowena looked shocked, as did a couple of the other directors. But Wylander and two others were nodding, clearly already knowing about the proposal in advance. If I may, Mr. Hemmings, Ashford intervened, I'd like to summarize our vision. Apex and Hemclay complement each other perfectly. You have advanced formulas and technology, and we have extensive distribution and manufacturing capabilities. Together, we could control up to 30% of the market. And what would be the structure of such a merger? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. We propose a stock swap. Ashford pointed to the documents. Hemclay would receive 25% of the combined company, which would retain both brands. Your shareholders will be fairly compensated, 25% out of my 53%. I'd lose control of a company I spent 50 years building. Those are predatory terms. I slammed the folder shut. Hemclay is worth a lot more than that. Market value is a relative term, Father, Garrett interjected. Apex is offering a 30% premium over our current stock price. That's a generous offer. Generous? I felt the anger rising inside me. We're talking about a company I built from the ground up, the people who've worked here for decades, formulas I've spent years developing. And you call that generous? Business is business, Garrett shrugged. Sentimentality is not profitable. You taught me that yourself. I taught you to value what we create, not just the money it brings. Valander cleared his throat. Boyd, we all understand your attachment to the company, but it's the board's responsibility to look at every opportunity to grow and develop the business. I think we should give Mr. Ashford the opportunity to present a full analysis of the benefits of the merger. I could see that Wylander had already taken Garrett's side, and judging by the looks on their faces, at least two other directors had as well. Rowena looked indignant, but she was only one of the 7 board members. Ashford began his presentation, talking about synergy, optimization, market strategy, and other corporate cliches. I listened half listening, watching Garrett. He sat with a smug expression on his face, occasionally inserting comments supporting Ashford's arguments. My son, who I'd given a job to after the collapse of his own business, who I've helped financially over the years. When the presentation was over, Wylander suggested we move on to the discussion. I think we should seriously consider this proposal, he said. The market is changing, and we have to adapt. I agree, another director supported him. Merging with Apex opens up new markets and opportunities. What about our employees? Rowena asked. The documents talk about staff optimization. That's a euphemism for layoffs. Unfortunately, some downsizing is inevitable, Ashford admitted. But we'll retain key people and offer good severance packages to the rest. People who have worked here for decades, Rowena shook her head. The people who helped build this company. This is a business, not a charity, Garrett said. We should be thinking about the future, not clinging to the past. I looked at my son and didn't recognize him. Where was the boy who had once proudly told his friends that his father made the best glue in the world? Who used to come to the lab after school and pepper me with questions? How did he turn into this cold, calculating man? I think we need time to analyze the proposal, I said, trying to delay the decision. We need an independent appraisal of the value of Hemclay and— Time is working against us, Father, Garrett interrupted. Apex won't wait forever. If we miss this opportunity, it could be seized by competitors. The competitors we've been outgrowing for the last 3 years, I objected. Hemclay doesn't need a bailout. We are a stable, profitable company with excellent prospects. Under your leadership, maybe, Garrett leaned forward. But what happens then? You're 75, father. How much longer will you be able to run the company? There it is, a direct attack on my age. I expected it, but I still felt the words hit me. My ability to run a company doesn't depend on the number of years, I replied. It's about results, and the results speak for themselves. The results could have been better, Garrett countered. If you hadn't given up on risky but promising projects, if you hadn't insisted on keeping outdated product lines for sentimental reasons, if you didn't cling to old management methods. Old ways? I could feel my voice rising. The same ones that turned a garage into a $25 million company? The same ones that made you live in a fancy house and drive an expensive car? The ones I pay for with my labor, Garrett snapped. Your labor? I couldn't hold back any longer. Who paid the down payment on your house? Who paid off your debts after the collapse of the sporting goods stores? Who paid for your children's private school education? Who covered Nima's credit card debts last year? There was silence in the hall. Several of the principals glanced around. Ashford looked awkward but interested. After all, this information could affect his negotiating strategy. That's all in the past. Garrett tried to brush it off. It has nothing to do with the current issue. It is, I argued, because it shows who really cares about the future of Hemclay and who's thinking only of their own gain. Garrett jumped up from his seat, his face red with anger. You always do this, he shouted, always reminding me of your help as if I should be forever grateful, always controlling everything and everyone, always thinking you know better. In this case, I do know better, I remained calm, which seemed to annoy him even more. Because I've been building this company all my life. I know every cog, every formula, every customer. And that's the problem, Garrett pounded his fist on the table. You can't see past your nose. The world is changing and you're stuck in the past. The company needs a new leader, a new vision. And that leader is you? I shook my head. The man who couldn't even keep a small chain of stores afloat? It was a low blow, I knew it, but my patience was wearing thin. Garrett's face contorted with rage. You know what, Dad? Get out of here. The business is mine. I earned it. I worked here for 10 years while you rested on your laurels. I've been developing new businesses, attracting clients, modernizing processes. All you did was cling to the past and remind everyone that you were the great Boyd Hemmings, the founder of Hemclay. There was dead silence in the conference room. No one had expected such an outburst. Rowena looked at Garrett with shock and disgust. Even Valander looked embarrassed. Ashford moved away from the table as if he wanted to distance himself from what was happening. And I just looked at my son and saw a stranger, a man with nothing left of the boy Elsa and I had raised, who we loved, who I gave a part of my life to. Did you deserve it? I said it quietly. What did you do to deserve what I spent half a century building? By undermining my authority behind my back? By scheming with the board of directors? By betraying the values this company was built on? Values don't pay the bills, Garrett snapped. We could be twice as big if you hadn't clung to your outdated principles. I slowly rose from my seat. Suddenly I felt tired, not from age but from frustration, from the realization that my own son considered me a hindrance, an obstacle, a burden. This meeting is over, I said calmly. Mr. Ashford, thank you for your presentation, but Hemclay has no interest in merging with Apex or any other company at this time. As majority owner, I have veto power over such decisions. Father, Garrett stepped toward me. You can't just shut this discussion down. The board of directors. The board can make recommendations, but the decision rests with the shareholders. I headed for the door. Now, if you'll excuse me. As I walked out of the conference room, I could hear Garrett fervently explaining something to the others, apologizing to Ashford, how he promises that this isn't over. In my office, I sank into a chair and closed my eyes. I was dizzy with a mixture of emotions, anger, frustration, bitterness, but most of all, deep, piercing pain. The pain of betrayal by the person closest to him. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Rowena, cup of tea in hand. "Thought you might need some," she said, setting the cup on the table. "Thank you," I nodded gratefully. "How's it going?" "Garrett's trying to save the situation." She sat down across from me. "He's convincing Ashford that a deal is still possible. Valander is backing him up, but the other directors don't look too convinced after that scene." I sighed. "Does he really hate me, Rowena?" She shook her head. "I don't think he hates you. It's more like he's jealous. All his life he's been trying to prove himself worthy of your name, your success. And when he realized he couldn't make something of himself, he decided to take yours. I've always tried to help him, to support him." "I know," she smiled softly. "But some people have a hard time accepting help. They see it as a reminder of their own inadequacy. And instead of gratitude, they feel resentment." We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Rowena asked, "What are you going to do now?" I wondered. It was a question that required serious thought. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But one thing is clear. I can't work with Garrett anymore as if nothing had happened. Not after what he said. What he was planning to do." "I understand," Rowena nodded. "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. And I'm not the only one. A lot of people in the company are on your side." She walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat in my office looking at the pictures on the walls, the history of Hemclay in snapshots, the first office, first big contract, the opening of a new production facility, a team that had grown from 3 people to hundreds, my life, my legacy, the one my own son wanted to take from me. The decision didn't come all at once. It formed gradually as I sat there, going over memories and contemplating the future. By the time I left the office that night, I already knew what I had to do. Garrett had said, "Get out. The business is mine." But he'd forgotten one important fact. I still owned the business, and I decided to remind him of that in the most unexpected way. I don't remember driving home after that awful meeting. Garrett's words, piercing as a dagger, resounded in my mind. "Get out of here, my business." I parked the car in the garage and sat there for a long time without turning off the engine, as if in a daze. I spent the evening wandering around the empty house that had once been filled with voices and laughter, the house that Elsa and I had bought 40 years ago when Hemclay began to bring in a steady income. I remembered Garrett running through those rooms, how proud he was of his big new bedroom, how we'd made a birdhouse for the backyard together. Somewhere in the closet was still his old bicycle, the one I took the training wheels off of when he turned 6. I remember his pride when he rode unsupported for the first time. "Look, Daddy, I did it by myself," the same voice that told me to get off today. Pouring myself a whiskey, I sat in the study in front of an old family album. Photos from different years. Our wedding to Elsa, Abernathy's birth, then Garrett's, family vacations, high school graduations, Garrett's first day of college. There are happy faces in every picture. Where did it all go wrong? Perhaps I was too busy with company when the kids were growing up. Elsa often chided me for this. "Boyd, they grow up so fast and you miss out on everything." But I was doing it for them, building a future, creating a legacy to pass on to the children. Abernathy seemed to understand that. She had never demanded special attention, had been independent from an early age, had chosen her own path, science over business. And Garrett. Perhaps he didn't have enough of my time, or perhaps I was overprotective, trying to compensate for my absence with gifts and favors. A phone call interrupted my musings. Abernathy. "Daddy, I just spoke to Rowena." I could hear the concern in her voice. "What happened?" I told her about the meeting, about the Apex proposal, about Garrett's outburst. She listened in silence, sighing occasionally. "I'm coming over right now," she said when I was done. "You don't have to, it's late." "I'm leaving, Daddy," she said, her tone unapologetic. I'll be there by midnight. Abernathy arrived even earlier than promised. She came into the house tall, slender, so much like Elsa that my heart sank. We hugged, and I felt some of the weight lift from my shoulders. At least one of my children still loves me. You look tired. She looked at me carefully. Let me make some tea. We sat in the kitchen just like the old days when she used to come in as a teenager to talk to me about her problems or plans. Only now it was mostly me talking and she listened, sometimes asking questions. I can't believe Garrett would do that. Abernathy shook her head when I finished my story. Though he'd changed in recent years. Colder, more calculating. When did it start? I asked. You talk to him more often than I thought. Not that often, she smiled sadly, but we call each other sometimes. I noticed a change after his chain of stores went under. He became angrier, angry at the world. And when you brought him into the company, there was this weird mix of gratitude and resentment. Resentment? I didn't understand. For what? For having to accept your help. For not being able to succeed on his own. For being indebted to you now, Abernathy sighed. Garrett had always been proud. Remember when he was a kid, when he refused help even when he couldn't do a task? I nodded. Indeed, my son had always been stubborn. He'd rather spend hours on a problem than admit he needed help. And then there's that Nima, Abernathy continued. She was always pushing him to make more aggressive decisions, more money, more status, more ambition. You never said you disapproved of his choices. It's not my business to approve or disapprove, my daughter shrugged, but I'd always assumed she loved his position and opportunities more than he did. We talked into the night. Abernathy stayed the night in her old room, which had remained untouched since she'd gone off to college. I went to bed with a heavy heart, but with the feeling that I was not alone in this struggle. In the morning, I woke up early out of habit. I went down to the kitchen and found Abernathy there, already preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Dad," she smiled. "The omelet is almost ready." You didn't have to get up so early. I was touched by her concern. I know your schedule. She placed a plate in front of me. Did you sleep well? As much as possible, I sipped my coffee. Are you staying for a few days? Took a week off, she nodded. Thought you might need some support. After breakfast, I called Rowena and told her I wouldn't be in the office today. She wasn't surprised. Garrett's already here, she informed me. He called an emergency sales meeting. I think he's trying to get the support of key managers. Thanks for the information. I was grateful for her loyalty. Keep me posted if there's any big news. Abernathy and I spent the afternoon sorting through old stuff in the garage, an activity I'd been putting off for years. Among the boxes of tools and old books, we found the Hemclay archive, the first contracts, drafts of patents, photos of the first lab. Look, Abernathy handed me a yellowed piece of paper. Your first business plan, handwritten. I took it, and memories came flooding back. The small apartment where Elsa and I lived, the kitchen table that served as my workspace, nights spent over calculations and formulas. Elsa bringing me coffee and telling me, "You're going to make it, Boyd. You're going to create something great." She always believed in me, I said quietly, even when no one else did. Mom would be proud of you. Abernathy put her hand on my shoulder. Of what you've created, and the way you're defending it now. In the evening, Torrin called. "Boyd, I heard about the incident yesterday." His voice sounded concerned. "Are you all right?" "As much as I can be," I answered. "Abernathy's here. She's with me." "Good," he approved. "Listen, we need to meet. There are things that need to be discussed, and documents that need to be prepared." "What kind of documents?" "A will, for starters," Thorin said in a businesslike tone. "And perhaps a power of attorney in case of, unforeseen circumstances." I knew what he meant. Garrett could try to challenge my legal capacity on the grounds of age. "Okay," I agreed. When? Tomorrow, in my office. Say, 10 o'clock? The next day, Abernathy and I arrived at Torrin's office at the appointed time. His office was located in a historic building in the center of Cold Springs, an old mansion remodeled for modern needs, but retaining the architectural charm of a bygone era. "It's good to see you, Abernathy." Torrin greeted my daughter warmly. "You've grown up to be a real beauty, like your mother." "Thank you, Uncle Thorin," she smiled. She always called him Uncle, even though he wasn't related to us. We walked to his office, where a young woman was already waiting with a folder of papers. "This is Felicity, my new assistant," Torrin introduced her. "She has prepared the preliminary documents we will discuss." We spent the next 2 hours talking about the legal intricacies, Garrett's possible actions, and my defense options. Torrin was, as always, thorough and thoughtful. "The most important thing now is to protect your assets and make sure your wishes for the future of the company are clearly stated," he explained. "A will is the first step, but we also need to think about the management structure of Hemclay in case of your temporary incapacity." "Do you think Garrett might try to have me declared incapacitated?" I asked bluntly. Torrin looked at me seriously. "After what happened at the meeting, I don't rule out that possibility." He showed how far he was willing to go. We discussed various scenarios and precautions. At the end of the meeting, Thorin presented me with a draft of the new will. "Read it carefully," he said. "If you have any special wishes or changes, we can make them." I began to read the document, which detailed how my assets were to be distributed after my death. According to the previous will, made while Elsa was still alive, most of the Hemclay shares were to go to Garrett and Abernathy in equal shares. "I want to change the distribution," I said after I'd finished reading. "Garrett shouldn't get control of the company, not after what he's done." "What distribution are you proposing?" Torrin asked, preparing to take notes. I hesitated for a moment. This was not an easy decision. Despite everything that had happened, Garrett was still my son. 10% to Garrett," I finally said. 30% to Abernathy. I paused. "I want to donate the remaining 13% to the Elsa Charitable Foundation, a fund that will support research in chemistry and provide scholarships for young scientists." Abernathy looked at me in surprise. "Dad, are you sure? 13% is a significant portion." "I'm sure," I nodded. "Your mother always believed in education and science. This will be the best memorial to her." Torrin wrote down my wishes. "Good. I'll have a final draft ready by tomorrow." "But, Boyd," he looked at me seriously, "that's only part of the solution. We need to think about how to protect the company right now, while you're alive and well." "I have some ideas," I said, "but I need more time to think about it." When we left Torrin's office, Abernathy took me under her arm. "Thank you for your trust, Papa," she said quietly. "But are you sure you want to give me this kind of responsibility? I've never worked in business." "You're smart and principled," I replied. "That's more important than experience. Besides, you'll have support: Rowena, Torrin, other people I trust." On the way home, my phone rang. Nima's number. I hesitated whether to answer it, but decided not to ignore the call. "Boyd," her voice sounded strained, "Garrett and I would like to meet with you to discuss the situation." "What situation, Nima?" I asked coldly. "The one where my son is trying to take my company away from me?" "It's not like that," she sighed. "There's been a misunderstanding. Garrett just wants—" "I know what Garrett wants," I interrupted. "He'd made it clear in the meeting. He was upset. He spoke out of turn." Nima tried to sound conciliatory. "Give us a chance to explain ourselves. Why don't we have dinner together? Tonight? At our place?" I looked at Abernathy, who shook her head negatively. "I don't think that's a good idea, Nima," I replied. "It's too early for such a conversation." "But the kids miss you." She changed tactics. "Especially Flint. He's been asking when you're coming to visit. Manipulation. Using grandchildren to get her way is typical Nima. Tell Flint I miss him too, I said. But right now I need time to think things over. Goodbye, Nima. I hung up, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. To use children in this situation is a new level of lowliness. She's lying, Abernathy said. Flint didn't ask about you. He's a teenager who only thinks about his video games and friends. I know, I sighed, but it still hurts. That evening, while we were eating dinner, the phone rang again. This time it was Garrett. Don't answer it, Abernathy said. He wouldn't say anything nice. But I answered it. Maybe out of masochistic curiosity, maybe because, no matter what, he was still my son. Father, his voice sounded calm, businesslike. We need to talk. I think you already said everything in the meeting, I replied. I was wrong, the words came out of the blue. What I said. It was unacceptable. I apologize. I was silent, not knowing whether to believe this sudden remorse. Could we meet? He continued. Discuss the future of the company like adults, without emotion. Emotionless? I couldn't hold back a bitter laugh. After you yelled at me in front of the entire board of directors? After you tried to pull the merger behind my back? I admit that I acted wrongly, he said, his voice a bit ingratiating. But, Father, think of the company, the employees, the customers. This situation is hurting everyone. You created the situation, Garrett, I reminded him, and now you're trying to manipulate me by appealing to my responsibility to the company. It's not manipulation, he countered. It's reality. The market doesn't forgive corporate conflict. If news of our disagreement leaks out, the stock could plummet. Customers will begin to question the stability of supply. Competitors will take advantage of the situation. There was some truth to what he said, and it worried me. Hemclay isn't just my company. It's the livelihood of hundreds of people. Let's meet on neutral ground, Garrett suggested, sensing my hesitation. A restaurant, for instance. Just you and me, without Nima and Abernathy. How do you know Abernathy's here? I asked suspiciously. Nima saw her car outside your house when she drove by, he explained. Look, Father, I know what I did was terrible, but didn't you teach us that family comes first? That all conflicts can be resolved by talking openly? Manipulation again, using my own words against me. But part of me, the old, tired part, wanted to believe that reconciliation was possible, that my son wasn't completely lost to me. I'll think about it, I said finally, and I'll get back to you later. After the conversation, I told Abernathy about Garrett's offer. I don't believe a word he said. She shook her head. It's another tactic. He's realized that a direct attack didn't work, and now he's trying to go soft. Maybe, I agreed. But what if he really has realized his mistake? Dad, Abernathy took my hand. I know you want to believe that, but think back to everything that's happened in the last few weeks. The secret meetings with the board members, talking to Apex behind your back, trying to turn the employees against you. It's not an impulsive act, it's a deliberate strategy. I knew she was right, but it was hard to give up hope of reconciliation. Besides, she added, if he's truly remorseful, let him prove it with actions, not words. Let him publicly apologize to the board of directors. Tell him to drop the merger idea. Let him recognize your authority and experience. That evening, Rowena called with an update from the office. Garrett had a series of meetings with the department heads, she reported. Talked about transition and a new direction. A few key managers seemed convinced, but most were wary. Leon openly expressed doubt, said the company had always thrived under your leadership and saw no reason to change. Thank you, Leon, I murmured, an old friend. And another thing, Rowena continued. Garrett met with Valander and 2 other board members at a restaurant. A friend of mine saw them there and they were discussing something. He's preparing the ground for the next board meeting, I realized. He's trying to get majority support. Sounds like it, Rowena agreed. Boyd, you need to get back to the office. Your absence only reinforces the rumors that you're no longer in control. She was right. Staying home was only playing into Garrett's hands. But the thought of going back to the office, of confronting my son face to face after everything that had been said, was hard. I'll come back tomorrow, I decided. I'll have a meeting with the department heads, show them that everything is under control. That's a good idea, Rowena approved. I'll have everything organized by 10 in the morning. After the conversation, I sat in my office for a long time, looking at Elsa's picture on the desk. She always understood people better than I did. What would her advice be now? Follow your heart, Boyd, I could almost hear her voice. But don't forget to use your head, too. The next morning, as I was getting ready for the office, I received a message from Torin. The will was ready, and he offered to stop by to sign it before traveling to Hemclay. At Torin's office, we were met by Felicity with the completed documents. Everything is prepared according to your wishes, she said, handing me a thick folder. A will, a power of attorney in case of incapacity, instructions for a charitable foundation. I read each document carefully, making sure everything was as I intended. Abernathy would receive 30% of Hemclay's stock and the right to vote for new management. Garrett got 10% with no voting rights. 13% went to the Elsa Charitable Foundation, which was to be governed by a board of trustees chaired by Abernathy. Are you sure about the restrictions for Garrett? Torin asked when I got to that point. That's pretty harsh. I'm sure, I nodded. He's proven that he's not ready to run the company responsibly, not ready to put Hemclay's interests ahead of his ambitions. I signed all the documents in the presence of a notary, whom Torin had invited especially for the occasion. The will took effect immediately, canceling all previous versions. Now, about pressing matters. Torin put the signed papers aside. What are your plans for Hemclay? Will you stay at the helm or are you considering stepping down? I haven't decided yet, I admitted. But I'm sure of one thing. Garrett mustn't get control of the company. Not in the state he's in now. I agree, Torin nodded. But be warned he won't give up easily, especially now that he's gotten this far. Leaving Torin's office, Abernathy and I headed for Hemclay. On the way, I could feel the tension building. What awaited me there? How would the staff react? And most importantly, how would the inevitable meeting with Garrett go? The Hemclay office greeted me with an unusual silence. Usually at this time, the hallways were buzzing with chatter, phone calls, keyboards clacking. Today, people were silent when they saw me, exchanging glances, nodding awkwardly. News of the conflict with Garrett had clearly spread through the company. Rowena waited at the door to my office, as elegant and collected as ever, though I noticed shadows under her eyes. The last few days had not been easy for her. "Welcome back, Boyd," she smiled, but there was tension in her smile. "The meeting with the department heads is in half an hour in the conference room." "Does Garrett know about it?" I asked, walking into the office. "Yes," Rowena followed me in. "He was unhappy that I organized this without his knowledge. But since you're still the chairman of the board and a major shareholder, he couldn't forbid it." Abernathy remained in the reception area talking to the secretary. I noticed the curious looks of the staff. The daughter of the company founder, who had never worked in the family business, suddenly appeared in the office in the middle of a corporate conflict. "How is the overall situation?" I asked Rowena when we were alone. "Tense," she sighed. "Garrett is very active. He's holding meetings, making statements about the new course and the need for change. Some managers support him, especially from the marketing and sales department, which he himself has recruited over the last few years. The manufacturing and research people are mostly on your side. They remember you being personally involved in the development of key formulas." I nodded. The arrangement was expected. Garrett had always been more interested in the commercial side of the business than in manufacturing or research. And the board of directors? I asked the big question. Weilander and Jameson are openly in favor of Garrett. Peterson and I are on your side. The others are hesitant. Rowena paused. But Garrett is working intensively with them. Last night he spent the whole evening with Lowell at the golf club. The situation was more serious than I thought. The board of directors could cause me a lot of problems, even though I have a controlling interest. Thank you, Rowena. I was truly grateful for her loyalty. I don't know what I would have done without you. That's what friends are for, she smiled warmer. By the way, Leon would like to talk to you before the general meeting. He's waiting in the small meeting room. Leon has been the head of production almost since the founding of the company. We started together when Hemclay had a staff of 5 and the production facilities were in a rented garage. If anyone knew the company as well as I did, it was him. Boyd. He shook my hand vigorously as I entered the conference room. At 68, Leon was still strong and agile. It's good to see you back in the ranks. Thank you, Leon. I sat down across from him. How is the situation at the production site? Tense, he frowned. Garrett came in yesterday talking about modernization and optimization. The guys are worried. Everyone remembers that those words usually mean layoffs. I won't allow mass layoffs, I assured him. Hemclay has always taken care of its people. That's what I told them. Leon nodded. But Boyd, the situation is complicated. Garrett's already scheduled a meeting with consultants for a business process restructuring. And rumor has it that he's preparing documents for an extraordinary meeting of the board of directors. That was disturbing news. A special meeting could only mean one thing. Garrett was going to launch a major attack on my position. When? I asked. Next Tuesday, Leon lowered his voice. Boyd, I'm on your side no matter what happens. A lot of people in the company are too. We remember who built Hemclay and made it what it is today. His words touched me. It's rare to find that kind of dedication in the business world. Thank you, Leon. I shook his hand. It means more to me than you know. The meeting with the department heads was tense but productive. I spoke openly about the Garrett situation without going into family details, but made my position clear. Hemclay would not participate in a merger or acquisition that could jeopardize its independence or the jobs of its employees. Most managers expressed support, although I noticed a few who avoided a direct look, obviously already recruited by Garrett. Rowena gave a report on the company's current financial situation, which had remained stable despite the turbulence in management. After the meeting, I returned to my office feeling both satisfied and tired at the same time. The fight had just begun, but the first round was still mine. Not an hour later, the door opened without a knock. Garrett burst into the office, his face contorted with anger. "What are you doing?" he was almost shouting. "Gathering managers behind my back? Undermining my authority?" I looked at him calmly. After everything that had happened, his anger no longer made the same impression on me. "I'm doing my job, Garrett," I said evenly. "As chairman of the board and founder of the company, I have a right and a duty to keep the executives informed of the current situation. You're turning them against me," he clenched his fists. "You're saying I want to destroy the company, when in fact I'm trying to save it from your outdated management." I just told the truth. I remained seated, defiantly calm in the face of his rage. That I would not approve a merger with Apex or any other company on the terms proposed, and that I would not allow mass layoffs. "This is business, Father." Garrett slammed his palm on the table. "Not a charitable organization. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions for the future." "The future of who?" I asked. "The company's or your own?" He was silent for a moment, clearly not expecting such a direct question. "The company, of course," he answered, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "And all the parties involved." "Including you and your new position in the merged company?" I pulled a document from my desk drawer that Rowena had found in the Apex proposal folder. CEO with a 5-year contract and options for additional shares? Very generous. Garrett turned pale. The item hadn't been mentioned in the general presentation. It was in the supplemental materials that were just for him. It's standard practice in mergers, he tried to justify himself. Someone has to lead the merged company. And that someone has to be you, of course. I shook my head. Even if the price is Hemclay's independence and the work of a lot of people who were here long before you. Garrett changed tactics, his voice almost pleading. Father, understand, the market is changing. Smaller companies won't survive in the new environment. Merging with Apex is an opportunity to keep the best of Hemclay under the protection of a larger player. I've been building this company for 50 years, I replied. I lived through the oil crisis of the 70s, the recession of the 80s, the financial crisis of the 2000 years. Each time we were predicted doom, and each time we came out stronger. Hemclay will survive even now without losing its independence. You're living in the past, Garrett snapped again. The world has changed. If we don't adapt, we'll lose. Perhaps, I agreed, but adaptation doesn't mean surrender, and I'm not going to let you sell off the company for your own profit. Garrett looked at me with undisguised anger. You won't have a choice, he said finally. There's a special meeting of the board of directors next week, and the majority will support me. We'll see. I didn't show that I already knew that information. Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do. When Garrett left, slamming the door, I called Torin. He's preparing an attack on the board, I said without preamble. We need to move faster than I planned. That's what I thought, Torin replied. What do you have in mind? The plan we discussed yesterday. It is time to put it into action. Are you sure? It's a radical step. I'm sure, I said firmly. The alternative is worse. I spent the next 3 days working intensively with Torin, Rowena, and Abernathy. We prepared documents, held meetings with key partners, developed a strategy. At the same time, I continued to run the company, showing everyone that I was in complete control of the situation. Garrett was not inactive either. He held a series of meetings with members of the board of directors, trying to gain their support. Through my sources, I knew that he used every argument available, from business, the need to consolidate to compete in a global market, to personal, my age and supposedly declining health. By Monday, the day before the extraordinary board meeting, everything was ready. I called an emergency meeting of all the company's executives and key employees. Garrett was away, meeting with potential investors in a neighboring city. The conference room was filled to capacity. Many people were standing along the walls. There were not enough seats. I went to the podium accompanied by Abernathy and Rowena. Torin sat in the front row with a folder of documents in his lap. Thank you all for taking the time, I began. As you know, the last few weeks have been difficult for Hemclay. There have been disagreements about the future of the company that have, unfortunately, become public. I paused, looking around the room. All faces were turned toward me with an expression of intense anticipation. 50 years ago, I started this company with a simple idea: to create the best industrial adhesives on the market. We started in a rented garage with 3 employees and 1 mixer. Today, Hemclay is a respected player in the global marketplace, with 276 employees and customers on 4 continents. I saw many nodding, especially veterans of the company who remembered its humble beginnings. All these years, I've been guided by one principle: people over profits. Don't get me wrong, I smiled. Profit is essential. Without it, there will be no growth, no investment, no jobs. But it should never be the only goal. A company is first and foremost about the people who work in it. I took a sip of water from the glass next to me. Recently, there have been proposals to merge Hemclay with other companies. Proposals that, in my opinion, are not in the best interests of our company or its employees. They are aimed at short-term financial gain rather than long-term sustainability. I saw some managers, especially those closer to Garrett, begin to look around with concern. After much deliberation, I have made what I believe is the best decision for the future of Hemclay. Today, I am announcing the sale of a majority stake in the company to a new consortium of investors, led by my daughter Abernathy Hemmings and CFO Rowena Carlisle. There was a surprised whisper around the room. This was a totally unexpected development. The consortium, which we named Elsa's Legacy in honor of my late wife, is acquiring 43% of Hemclay. Together with the 10% that Rowena already owns, this gives a controlling interest. All the legal formalities have been completed, and the deal is effective as of today. I gestured for Abernathy to come to the podium. My daughter, Dr. Abernathy Hemmings, will represent the consortium on the board of directors. As many of you know, she did not work for Hemclay, choosing an academic career. But she grew up with this company, knows its history and values. And most importantly, she shares my vision of Hemclay as an independent, innovative company that cares about its people. Abernathy stood beside me, and I could see the determination in her eyes that reminded me so much of Elsa when she was younger. I also want to announce a change in my will, I continued. The 10% of the company's stock that I will own for the rest of my life will be distributed as follows. 10% will go to the Elsa Hemmings Charitable Foundation, which will support research in chemistry and provide scholarships for young scientists. I paused, preparing for the most difficult part. As for my son, Garrett Hemmings, his status as vice president of the company remains unchanged. However, he will receive no additional shares under my will. I believe his current 3% stake is sufficient for him to participate in the company's profits. The whispering in the hall intensified. Everyone realized that this was effectively removing Garrett from the possibility of ever gaining control of Hemclay. I realize this decision may seem harsh, I glanced around the audience. But it's driven by a concern for the future of the company I've spent a lifetime building. Hemclay is not just a business. It's a legacy I want to preserve for future generations. Rowena joined us at the podium and I passed the floor to her. She presented a detailed plan for the company's development over the next 5 years, including investments in research and development, modernization of production, and geographical expansion of sales. The plan was ambitious but realistic, based on Hemclay's financial capabilities without external financing. After her presentation, I returned to the microphone for closing remarks. Tomorrow's extraordinary board meeting will take place as planned. It will formally present the changes in the ownership structure of the company. I will remain chairman of the board until the end of the year, after which I plan to retire. The new chairman will be Rowena Carlisle, someone who knows Hemclay almost as well as I do and shares its values. I looked around the room, feeling mixed emotions, relief at the decision, sadness at the thought of parting with a company I had given my life to, and anxiety about Garrett's reaction when he found out what had happened. Thank you all for your consideration and for our years of working together. Hemclay was, is, and will continue to be a great company because of you, the people who put your talent, energy, and dedication into it. The applause was long and sincere. Many people came up after the meeting shaking hands, expressing support. Leon hugged me, not hiding his tears. "You did the right thing, Boyd," he said. "It's the best decision for the company." When most of them had gone, it was just me, Abernathy, Rowena, and Torrin in the conference room. "Well, it's done," Torrin said, gathering up his papers. "Now we must prepare for tomorrow's meeting. Garrett won't take it quietly." "I know," I sighed, "but he has no legal grounds to challenge the deal. Everything was done in strict accordance with the law." "That won't stop him from trying," Rowena said. "He's unpredictable when it comes to his ambitions. We were still discussing the details of the upcoming meeting when the conference room door opened. Garrett stood there, his face contorted with rage. "What have you done?" he shouted, coming toward me. "I just got a call from Wylander. You sold the company behind my back." "Not behind your back," I replied calmly. "I went against your plans to sell it to Apex. You had no right." He stopped a few feet away from me, clenching and unclenching his fists. "This is a family company, my inheritance, which you were going to destroy for your own gain." I looked him straight in the eye. "Get out of here. Business is mine." "Remember those words, Garrett. You gave up your own inheritance at that moment." He turned pale, then red, unable to find words for his rage. "You'll regret it," he said at last. "I'll challenge the deal. I'll prove that you're incapacitated by age, that you've been deceived, manipulated." "Try it," Thorin said calmly. "All the documents are in order. The medical examination has been passed. The deal has been concluded with all the legal formalities." "This isn't over." Garrett gave us all a searing look. "I'll find a way to get back what's rightfully mine." "Nothing is rightfully yours, Garrett," Abernathy said softly. "Everything you have is because of your father, and instead of thanking him, you betrayed him. You," he turned to his sister, "you were always Daddy's favorite, always getting what you wanted, and now you've taken the company." "I didn't take the company," she said calmly. "I helped preserve what my father had spent a lifetime building, and if you ever prove yourself trustworthy, maybe you can play a bigger role in her future." Garrett glared at us with undisguised hatred, then turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard the glass shook. "That was predictable," Thorin said after a pause. "But it doesn't make it any easier." I felt suddenly tired. The confrontation with my son, despite all the preparation, was harder than I had expected. "I should have anticipated that he would react this way," I said quietly. "Maybe there was another way." "Don't blame yourself, Dad." Abernathy put her arm around my shoulders. "You gave Garrett plenty of chances. He made his own choices." I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was spinning with thoughts of the past, of the future, of the decisions that had led to this moment. I remembered Garrett as a child, a smiling, inquisitive boy who had once looked at me with adoration. Where and when had that boy disappeared, giving way to an ambitious, ruthless man willing to betray his own father for profit? At dawn, I went out to the orchard that Elsa and I had created together. The apple trees we had planted the first year in this house now towered above the roof. I sat on a bench under one of them and watched the sky lighten in the east. What would Elsa say about my decision? Would she approve of my choice? Or would she rebuke me for being hard on my son? "You've always done what you thought was right, Boyd," I heard her voice say. "And you've done the same thing now, protected what we've built together." In that moment, sitting in the garden, I felt a strange calm. Yes, the decision had been painful. Yes, the relationship with my son would probably never recover. But Hemclay had been saved. The company that Elsa and I had built from nothing, that had given jobs to hundreds of people, that had become our legacy to the world. 5 years have passed since that day. A lot has changed. Garrett tried to challenge the deal in court, as promised, but to no avail. Then he left Cold Springs, started his own consulting firm in another state. We barely communicate, only occasionally exchanging formal holiday greetings. Abernathy and Rowena have exceeded my expectations as executives. Chemclay not only maintained its market position but expanded it by opening new areas in biodegradable polymers, an area in which Abernathy specialized. I retired as I had planned, but I remain a consultant to the company. Sometimes I drop by the lab where young chemists are developing new formulas. Some of them are Elsa Foundation scholars, talented guys who remind me of myself in my youth. Today, sitting in that same orchard under an apple tree, I think about justice, about family, about legacy. Was there justice in the way I dealt with Garrett? Probably not, at least not in the usual sense of the word. But was there justice in what he did to me? In the way he planned to dispose of the company I'd created? Family is a complicated matter. We love our children, we want the best for them, but we can't control what kind of people they will grow up to be or what decisions they will make.